Who invited her? The voice was mocking, stretched into a laugh, fingers stabbing the air like a verdict. Heads turned. Laughter rippled from one side of the table, bouncing off polished wood and crystal water glasses. They weren't laughing at a joke. They were laughing at her. She didn't move. A navy suit, straight posture, one hand resting on a leather bag, the other steady around a phone. She stood, as if the insult had never landed. But the room knew it had. Everyone knew. The young heir in the beige suit smirked wider. His father crossed his arms, lips pressed thin, amused like a man certain of his throne. Two aides chuckled under their breath, already looking past her as if she were disposable clutter. The question wasn't curiosity. It was dismissal dressed up as humor. Who invited her? Meant she doesn't belong. And the room agreed until silence became heavy, until her stillness bent the air. One man at the far end raised his phone discreetly, red record light blinking. Another assistant scribbled something, then paused, as if ashamed of the scene unfolding. The laughter shrank when it met their hesitation. She lifted the phone closer to her ear, not flustered, not rushed. A calm, deliberate gesture like a judge preparing the gavel. The air barked again. This meeting is for decision makers, not whoever she island. He expected applause. Instead, his words fell flat, bouncing into a silence he couldn't control. She let him finish, then placed her glass back on the table with the precision of someone drawing a line. No reply, no defense, just presence. Inside her calm, there was memory years ago, told by a professor she didn't belong in graduate school. A hotel clerk once demanded extra ID because women like her couldn't possibly afford the suite. The words echoed now, recycled by new mouths but cut from the same prejudice. She breathed once, steady, grounding herself in the rhythm she had mastered. Silence first, truth later. The father leaned forward, voice lower but sharper. We're wasting time. Escort her out. The room held its breath. But she still didn't move, not an inch. Her eyes shifted once, slow, deliberate, to the young man who'd laughed the loudest. He looked away first, and in that fragile pause before the storm turned, before power flipped, her voice came, quiet but absolute. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to her. The boardroom wasn't laughing anymore. It was waiting, unknowingly, for the verdict she already held in her hand. The silence didn't break her. It framed her. She set the phone down softly on the polished table, fingertips brushing the screen like she was signaling someone far away. The suit she wore was cut sharp but unadorned navy wool, white blouse, no necklace, no watch flashing for attention. No logos, no armor, nothing to announce who she was. That was intentional, because she knew this room. She knew what they expected power to look like. Gray hair, tailored arrogance, cufflinks heavy enough to buy silence. She gave them none of that. She walked in looking ordinary, knowing full well she was anything but. Around the table sat the family that had built their empire on oil, steel, then finance. A dynasty photographed for magazines, praised for philanthropy, feared in negotiations. Their last name could tilt markets. And yet, the $5 billion deal on the table did not belong to them. It belonged to her. But they didn't know that. Or maybe they refused to imagine it. She had chosen to arrive without entourage, without the trappings they thought would validate her. Just herself, her bag, her silence. It wasn't humility. It was a test. The young heir who mocked her now leaned back, smirking, tapping his Mont Blanc pen against a notepad like a metronome of disdain. His sister scrolled her phone under the table, barely pretending to listen. Their father, silver-haired, stared as if daring her to speak. She didn't, not yet. Instead, she let the memory of why she was here flicker across her mind. 2 decades of building, brick by brick. At 26, she'd been denied a bank loan despite collateral 3 times the requirement. At 31, a contractor refused to sign because women don't lead infrastructure. At 39, an investor told her, to her face, that she should bring in a male partner if she wanted credibility. Every slight had become mortar, every insult, steel reinforcement, And now, at 44, she sat across from a family who had no idea they were moments away from losing the one deal that could save their empire's crumbling balance sheet. The irony was exquisite. She poured herself water, steady hand, no rush. A few in the room exchanged glances. To them it looked like passivity. In truth, it was dominance disguised as calm. A junior associate seated near the door shifted uncomfortably. He'd seen her name on the preliminary documents, knew it wasn't random she was here. His eyes darted between her and the patriarch, torn between loyalty and conscience. The heir chuckled again, louder this time, trying to drag the room back under his control. Meetings like this are for visionaries, not whoever she island. She didn't answer. She didn't need to, because she had already decided. Their arrogance would finish the work for her, and as the glass walls reflected the skyline outside, her silence grew heavier than their laughter. The air shifted when the father finally spoke. "Enough games," he said, voice measured but sharp, like a blade drawn across glass. "This room is reserved for decision-makers, not assistants who slipped past security." The words hung heavy, an insult delivered as policy. The son leaned in, elbows wide, smirk deepening. "Dad's right. Whoever put her name on the list should be fired. These meetings are delicate, billions at stake. We don't need distractions." He turned to her with a grin that mistook cruelty for charm. "You understand, right? People like you don't usually get this close to real power." A few chuckles followed, nervous, not unanimous. One aide forced a laugh that died in his throat. Another stared at the table, unwilling to meet her eyes. Still, she didn't flinch. Her calm was unbearable to them. They wanted protest, an outburst, something to justify their prejudice. Instead, she offered silence, and that silence felt louder than the city beyond the windows. The sister finally lifted her gaze from her phone, lips curling with disinterest. "This is embarrassing," she said flatly. "Just escort her out so we can proceed." The patriarch nodded, already signaling to a suited guard at the door. The man moved closer, steps deliberate, hand hovering near his earpiece as if removing her was routine. That was when a junior associate shifted in his seat. He couldn't help it. His brow furrowed. His pen tapped against the pad, then stilled. He'd seen her name. He remembered the briefing. She wasn't a walk-in. She wasn't an assistant. But his voice caught in his throat, buried under the weight of hierarchy. Across the room, another outsider, a vendor rep who had been invited as observer, raised his phone slightly, red recording light blinking. Not bold enough to intervene, but unwilling to let the moment vanish unrecorded. The son noticed and barked, "Put that away. This isn't a circus." But the circus was already alive. The patriarch leaned across the table, his cufflinks glinting in the light. "Miss, I'll say this once. Leave now. You don't belong here." Her hand closed softly around her phone. She didn't raise it. She didn't call out. She just let her fingertips rest on it. A gesture so subtle, yet so final, it unsettled even the guard approaching her chair. For the first time, the laughter thinned. The arrogance wavered. Not because she spoke, but because she didn't. And in that pause, everyone felt it. The storm wasn't hers, it was theirs. The guard's shoes clicked softly on the marble floor, the only sound in the boardroom. Every eye followed his approach. The family leaned back, smug, certain the problem was about to be handled. But she didn't rise, didn't protest. She lifted her glass again, drank slowly, then set it down with a precision that mocked their urgency. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. The patriarch frowned, impatience showing in the crease of his forehead. "Why are we wasting time?" he muttered, half to the room, half to himself. "She's not even speaking." "Exactly." She kept her spine straight, gaze steady, her calm daring them to escalate. The young heir couldn't stand it. He leaned forward, voice dripping disdain. "Do you think ignoring us will make you matter? You're here by mistake. Take the hint." No answer. Only the soft hum of the air vents, the city traffic muted behind glass walls. That quiet became unbearable. A few aides shifted in their seats. One cleared his throat, then stopped. Another scribbled in his notebook, though the pen never touched paper. Her phone vibrated once, silent against the table. She tapped the screen, a movement so subtle only those watching closely noticed. It wasn't panic. It was precision. The guard paused, uncertain. Something in her stillness unsettled him, though he couldn't name it. She looked less like a trespasser and more like the only person certain of her place. Years earlier, in a hotel lobby across the country, she had been told, "Guests like you don't stay here." She remembered the sting, the shame, but she also remembered her vow. Next time, she would not shrink. Next time, she would own the silence until they drowned in it. That vow was alive now. The patriarch slammed a folder shut, papers rattling. "Enough." His voice cracked the air, but her expression didn't change. She simply folded her hands, eyes unblinking. The young heir scoffed louder, desperate. "She thinks she's untouchable. Fine, throw her out." But the words echoed differently this time, less command, more desperation. And the silence that followed was no longer hers. It belonged to the room, suffocating, pressing in, forcing everyone to recognize what they had just witnessed. A woman who refused to bow, a presence too heavy to erase. It started small, just a flicker of red light in the corner. The junior associate near the end of the table, barely 30, had his phone tilted at an angle that wasn't for notes. The camera was on. His hand trembled slightly, not from fear of her, but from the weight of what he was capturing. A dynasty's prejudice, unfiltered, time-stamped. He wasn't alone. Across the glass partition, a catering staff member paused with a tray of coffee. Her eyes narrowed, taking in the tone, the posture, the insults dressed as jokes. She didn't move closer, but she didn't move away either. She lingered, lips pressed, her silence bearing witness. The heir noticed the phone first. His voice spiked. "Are you recording this? Put that away right now." The junior didn't answer. His thumb hovered, torn between conscience and career. The sister rolled her eyes, muttering loud enough to cut the room. "This is ridiculous. Next thing we know, she'll be live streaming her pity party." That was when another voice slipped into the space, quiet but firm. The vendor rep at the back of the room, middle-aged, plain gray suit, said, "She hasn't said a word. All I've heard is you." The room froze. For the first time, someone outside the family broke rank. The words weren't loud, but they cracked the illusion of control. The patriarch's jaw tightened. "This is private business," he barked. "Stay in your lane." But the damage was done. The witness had spoken, and silence no longer belonged solely to her. The junior lowered his phone slightly but didn't stop recording. His eyes met hers for half a second. He looked away quickly. But the connection was made. Someone else saw. Someone else understood. The catering staff slipped out quietly, but not before whispering to a colleague near the hallway, "You might want to see this." Ripples, small, invisible, but unstoppable. And still, she hadn't moved. She remained seated, hands folded, gaze steady. Not pleading, not defensive, just present. Letting others reveal themselves, letting witnesses step into their own courage. The heir slammed his pen down, furious. This isn't about her. It's about billions of dollars on the line. Why is anyone even hesitating? The vendor rep didn't flinch. Maybe because the billions are hers to give. Gasps rippled like cracks across marble. The family froze. The guard hesitated. The room shifted again, no longer a one-sided display of power, but a gathering storm of eyes, cameras, and voices that would not forget. The crack in their control widened fast. The patriarch straightened, silver cufflinks glinting as he slammed his palm flat on the table. "This meeting is ours," he barked, "and we decide who belongs." His words weren't just directed at her anymore, they were aimed at the vendor, at the associate, at anyone daring to shift the narrative. The heir picked up the cue, his voice louder, sharper. "She's a fraud. She walked in here dressed like staff, and now she's sitting at our table, laughable." He turned toward the guard. "Do your job. Get her out." The guard hesitated. He had moved halfway across the room, but the weight of cameras visible and hidden anchored his steps. His hand twitched near his earpiece, uncertain if removing her would end his career faster than ignoring the order. The sister leaned forward, phone finally down, venom in her tone. "This company can't afford imposters. If she's really someone, where's her proof? Credentials? Nothing. She's wasting our time." Still, She didn't rise. Instead, she lifted her glass again, slow, deliberate, the reflection of the chandelier rippling across the surface. Every motion was precise, as if she were conducting an orchestra only she could hear. The vendor rep spoke again, louder this time. "You keep calling her a fraud without checking a single fact. Why?" The heir sneered. "Because it's obvious. Look at her." That sentence cracked the air. It wasn't about documents. It wasn't about deals. It was about image, about prejudice, thinly veiled as business protocol. The junior associate's pen slipped from his hand, clattering to the floor. The sound was small, but in the tension-charged silence, it was thunder. He bent to pick it up, buying himself a second to hide the shame tightening his jaw. She finally moved just her eyes, lifting from the glass to meet the heir's stare, calm, unblinking, the kind of gaze that didn't need volume to silence a room. The patriarch mistook it for defiance. "You've embarrassed yourself enough," he growled. "Security is on call. One more word, and you're removed by force." The guard shifted again, caught in the crossfire of authority and doubt. He looked at her, then at the family, then at the vendor with the phone still recording. His jaw tightened, but he didn't step closer. Not yet. The sister exhaled sharply, shaking her head. Unbelievable. All this because someone let the wrong person in. The words hung like smoke, ugly, undeniable, and recorded. And still, she remained steady, her silence louder than every insult bouncing off the glass walls. The storm wasn't coming. It was here. The patriarch's patience finally shattered. He snapped his fingers toward the guard, voice slicing through the room. "Now, remove her. I don't care how, just get her out of my sight." The guard stepped forward, heavier this time, the soles of his shoes pounding against the polished floor. His hand hovered near her chair. The family watched with satisfaction, certain they were moments away from erasing her presence. Then came the insult that seared through every wall of decorum. The heir grabbed a folder from the table, the very contract draft she had reviewed earlier, and shoved it across the glossy surface. Pages scattered, sliding toward her like scraps tossed to the floor. "Here, take your little papers and go. Deals like this aren't written for people like you." Gasps rippled across the room. Even those loyal to the family shifted uncomfortably. The words were too sharp, too blatant. The sister piled on, her tone dripping disdain. "Do you even understand the numbers in there? Or did someone read them out loud for you?" The patriarch's hand slammed the table again. "Enough chatter. Security." The guard reached out. His fingers brushed the back of her chair, an unmistakable gesture of force. Phones tilted higher. The vendor rep's camera caught every movement. The junior associate's thumb pressed down hard, recording light burning red. Even the catering staff in the hallway had gathered near the doorway now, their eyes wide, whispering in disbelief. She still didn't move. Not away, not back. She simply straightened, her silence anchoring her like stone in the middle of a rising tide. Inside her calm, memory surged again. At 22, she had been told by a recruiter, "You should try administrative roles. Executive suites aren't for women like you." At 30, she had been escorted out of a negotiation she herself had funded, because they mistook her for an assistant. And now, decades later, the same hand reaching to drag her away, the same words echoing, "Not for you." But she was no longer 22. The guard's shadow loomed over her. The heir leaned back, triumphant, certain the humiliation was complete. And then she did the smallest, sharpest thing. She reached down, gathered the scattered contract pages with deliberate calm, stacked them neatly, and set them back in the center of the table. A gesture of ownership, not submission. Her eyes rose, locking with the patriarch's plant. The silence that followed wasn't absence. It was pressure, building, dangerous. Everyone in that room felt it. They thought they were throwing her out. But in truth, they had just thrown away the last chance to save themselves. Her fingers lingered on the stack of papers she had just reassembled, pressing them flat with the precision of someone reclaiming what was hers. Then, without raising her voice, she picked up her phone and spoke one sentence that cracked the air. "Cancel the deal. Effective immediately." The words weren't loud, but they landed harder than the patriarch's fist ever could. On the other end, a clear, steady voice replied, audible enough for those nearest to hear. "Understood. Executing cancellation protocol now." The heir blinked. What did she just say?" The sister frowned, confusion flashing across her face before retreating into disdain. She's bluffing. That phone call means nothing. But the vendor rep at the back leaned forward, eyes widening. He knew the cadence of command when he heard it. That wasn't the tone of someone asking for help. It was the tone of someone giving an order. The patriarch's jaw tightened. You think you can scare us with theatrics? This family doesn't bend to. Her gaze cut across him, unblinking, steady. He faltered mid-sentence. The guard still stood beside her chair, hand awkwardly hovering, but even he seemed frozen, caught between the order he'd been given and the power that radiated from her composure. The junior associate dropped his pen again, but this time he didn't bother hiding his nerves. His recording caught every word, every shift in the room's fragile balance. She leaned back, folding her hands, her voice calm as stone. You speak of billions as if they're yours to grant. They're not. They were mine to consider, and now they're gone. The heir slammed his pen against the table, but the sound was hollow, desperate. You can't just cancel. Her phone buzzed again. She raised it to her ear, nodding once. Confirmed? Good. Make sure the termination clause is public. The words spread like fire through dry brush. The aides exchanged frantic looks. The sister's face drained of color. The patriarch's grip on the armrest tightened until his knuckles went white. For the first time, the laughter was gone. So was the mockery. In its place, the first hints of fear. Because this was no bluff. The guard slowly withdrew his hand from the chair, stepping back without being told. He had seen enough to know where true authority Saturday. She didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She simply placed the phone down again. Her silence now sharper than any insult hurled at her. The power in the room had shifted, and everyone felt it. The room buzzed with unease. Aides whispered, papers shuffled, but her stillness anchored the storm. She slid the canceled contract across the table, slow enough that every eye followed. Then she rose, not abruptly, deliberately, like a verdict unfolding. Her voice came quiet, yet every syllable carried weight. You've asked who invited me. You've called me an assistant, a fraud, a distraction. She paused, gaze sweeping across each face. But the truth is simple. I am the deal. Shock rippled like electricity. The heir blinked, mouth half open. The sister's hand froze over her phone. Even the patriarch's stare faltered, eyes narrowing in disbelief. She continued, steady as stone. This acquisition, the $5 billion you've been begging for, it doesn't exist without me. I'm not a guest at your table. You're sitting at mine. Gasps echoed. Aides exchanged frantic glances. The junior associate's phone shook in his grip, recording history. The vendor rep at the back straightened, vindicated. I knew it, he muttered, loud enough for the room to hear. She let the silence breathe, then added, sharper now. I built the company you're desperate to partner with. I hold the majority stake. And as of 3 minutes ago, I withdrew my offer. The words landed like hammer strikes. The heir's smirk collapsed into confusion. That's impossible. The sister tried to recover, scoffing. You're bluffing. No woman. Her gaze cut across the table, slicing through the sentence before it finished. No woman? She repeated, voice edged with steel. I've been told that line since I was 20. It was false then. It's fatal now. The patriarch leaned forward, face flushed, desperate to reclaim control. You mean to tell me? I don't mean to tell you, she interrupted, calm but final. I just did. Silence slammed down harder than any gavel. The guard took a step back, head bowed slightly, no longer aligned with the family's power. The witness's associate, vendor, even the staff by the door stood taller, their doubt now transformed into recognition. She straightened, her presence undeniable. I am not here by accident. I am not here by permission. I am here because this empire you worship is already mine to dismantle. And with that, the room that had laughed at her mere minutes ago fell into stunned, quiet faces, pale, power slipping through trembling hands. The reveal was complete. The silence broke not with words but with faces. The heir's smirk dissolved, leaving only a boyish panic behind polished cufflinks. His hand twitched as if searching for something solid, but there was nothing left to grip. The pen he had slammed minutes earlier now rolled off the table, clattering against marble like a judgment. His sister paled, the glow of her phone screen washing her face in cold light. She typed something frantic, then stopped, realizing no message could rewrite what had just been spoken aloud. Her eyes darted to the door as if escape might still be possible. The patriarch stayed rigid, but his jaw betrayed him tight, clenched, trembling at the edges. His empire had never faced defiance like this, and certainly not from the woman he had just tried to erase. For the first time, his silence was not authority. It was fear. Across the room, aides exchanged glances like soldiers watching their general lose the war. One looked at his watch, another at the ceiling, both silently calculating how quickly loyalty could shift without costing them their careers. The junior associate's phone shook as he filmed. His eyes were wide, breath uneven, but behind the fear was awe. He knew this recording wasn't just evidence, it was history. The kind whispered about in corridors, replayed in training, dissected in boardrooms for decades. The vendor rep at the back lowered his phone, no longer needing proof. He simply stared, lips parting as if to speak, then closing again. For once, even words felt insufficient. Near the doorway, the catering staff who had lingered earlier leaned in further. One mouthed, "Oh my God," to the other. Both gripped their trays tighter, not in fear, but in exhilaration. They had walked in to serve coffee. Now they were witnessing an empire fracture. The guard stepped back fully, arms at his sides. His orders no longer mattered. The authority he was supposed to serve had shifted. He knew it. Everyone knew it. And she stood at the center of it all. Calm, unyielding, not smiling, not celebrating, just letting the silence show who truly held the room. The patriarch finally rasped, voice breaking the tension but not restoring his power. You set us up." Her reply was immediate, precise. "Number, I tested you. And you failed." The words echoed, bouncing off glass walls like a sentence carved in stone. The aides looked down, ashamed. The sister's phone slipped from her grip. The heir sank back into his chair, pale and trembling. For the first time in decades, the dynasty felt small, and every witness in that room knew they were watching history fold in on itself. The air thickened, every second dragging like a verdict. She reached for her phone again, not in haste but with the calm of someone writing the final line in a story already finished. Her voice carried, steady, resonant. "Confirm. Terminate all negotiations with the Bennett family effective immediately. Freeze access to joint accounts, revoke board privileges, and release the statement to press." On the other end, a voice replied crisply, "Confirmed. Executing now." The patriarch lurched forward, face crimson. "You can't do this. We built this empire before you were even born." She cut across him, eyes unblinking. "And now you'll watch it collapse because arrogance blinded you." The heir half rose from his seat, desperation cracking his polished tone. "Wait, let's talk." Her gaze sliced through him. "Talk?" she echoed. "You mocked me, ordered me out, called me a fraud. You spoke as if billions were yours by birthright. Now you'll learn what it feels like when that illusion is stripped away." The sister's voice trembled. "This is theft." "No," she said firmly, her words striking like steel against stone. "This is accountability." The guard stepped back another pace, shoulders squared, as if aligning himself with the true power in the room. The aides froze, caught between two collapsing worlds, their silence a betrayal louder than speech. Then she gave the final command. "Escort them out of my building." The words detonated, not shouted, not dramatic, delivered with such finality that the room itself seemed to exhale. The guard turned, for the first time facing the family instead of her. His hesitation evaporated. Authority had shifted hands. And he knew whose orders mattered now. The patriarch sputtered, "You'll regret this." She didn't raise her voice. "Number, you'll remember this. Every time you sit at a table, you'll hear the echo of today. Power does not wear the face you expect." The heir collapsed back into his chair, pale. The sister covered her mouth, eyes wide. The aides stayed silent, phones buzzing quietly in their pockets, as headlines began to roll in. In less than a minute, a dynasty had been dismantled not by shouting, not by spectacle, but by a woman who refused to be erased. The glass walls reflected a different room now. The dynasty that once filled it with laughter sat hollow, stripped of its armor. Phones buzzed across the table, alerts spilling headlines faster than they could process. $5 billion deal canceled. Bennett Empire in freefall. She stood at the head of the table, posture unshaken. Not triumphant, not cruel, simply inevitable. The patriarch tried one last swing at dignity. His voice cracked, but he forced the words anyway. This will ruin us. Her eyes softened, not with pity, but with truth. You ruined yourselves the moment you decided respect was optional. Silence, heavy, final. She gathered her bag, lifted her phone, and walked toward the glass doors. Each step echoed, not hurried, but resonant, the cadence of authority that didn't need to shout. At the threshold, she paused. Every eye clung to her. Even the guard, even the aides, even the witnesses who had hidden behind silence now leaned forward, as if waiting for a sentence. She turned once, gaze sweeping the fractured empire behind her. And then came the words that would live far beyond the boardroom. Words that would outlast the dynasty itself. You asked who invited me. The answer is simple. I never needed an invitation. I built the table you're sitting at. And when I leave, so does your future. No one spoke. No one moved. The vendor rep lowered his phone slowly, shaking his head in awe. The junior associate, breathless, mouthed a single word history. The catering staff outside whispered, "She owns it all." Their voices carrying like a chorus. She walked out, doors sliding shut with a whisper softer than justice but heavier than any verdict. The room remained frozen, the dynasty suffocating in its own silence. And the world outside was already shifting, already talking, already remembering. Because dignity had spoken, because silence had won, because power had never needed permission.